Hi guys, fellow soul travelers. There was another thought that sprang to mind over the weekends with regards to how our consciousness is being manipulated. And this pertains to spirituality. It's not a great word, but I can't think of another word to replace it, so I use it for the time being. Our awakening is obviously a threat to the forces of darkness, and they will and have done everything they can to subvert that process. And one of the ways in which they do this is to take sound spiritual concepts, information that would benefit us if we employ it correctly, to take those concepts, that wisdom, that gnosis, and to funnel that through very unsavory characters that people the spiritual arena. And they give us that information then, basically wrapped with a lot of other extraneous kind of information that is profoundly unsound and actually very detrimental. So that when we come across this information in that context, we immediately, reactionary that we are, reject the concept as being of unsound properties, such as infinite love or love and light, which was hijacked by the New Age very much and was bandied about very much. A lot of people are, because they don't think things through and they don't realize that they're being manipulated, they then think, love and light is bad, we must reject it, because it's given to them in the wrong context, very cleverly designed for them then to reject with rejecting said concept. That is what it's all about. Love and light in and of itself is a sound principle when used correctly. It doesn't mean what they say it means, and I'm not going to go into it because I do that a lot and I don't need to reiterate myself, but this is what they do. They influence us basically this way. So but when good, sound spiritual information that we can employ in our awakening journey, especially when we're going through the dark night of the soul, is espoused by certain individuals and is thrown into the cauldron and mixed up with loads of very disempowering and skewed information, we then come across it and our first reaction is to reject that information straight off. Okay, that's bullshit, that's bad. And that's basically one way to subvert the course of our awakening, which is why when I come across information, regardless of who is giving me that information or the context in which it is given me, whether that is by a teacher or a guru or a YouTube channel or a film or a TV series, I look at it as a single piece of information. I take it out of the context in which it's given to me, and I ask myself, does this resonate with me? Would this be helpful to me? How can I employ this in the right way to benefit my own journey? This is what I call looking for the pearls in the mud. Okay. Because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are so easily manipulated because they're still operating from the fake persona. And another one that another way that is quite obvious, that things they do is like, for example, the Matrix films came out, right? And they spoke to a lot of people that were awakening at the time that those films were being shown, and even people that are awakening now come across those films. And yes, because we live in the Matrix. We all call it the Matrix. We call it the Matrix because of those films. Now, to me, there's something a little off about that. Something doesn't feel quite right. We have got to be aware at all times that the powers of darkness are always busy hijacking and subverting truth. And they're masters of psychological manipulation. They really are. So we have to learn to recognize that. We have to become masters ourselves. We have to learn to see when we're being had. When something that is good, sound information is being given to us in a way that makes us reject it as bad or wrong, and when bad, unsavory information that will be to our detriment is given to us in such a way as to make us think that it's good and that it will help us, because it won't. And we don't often recognize that. These are the pitfalls. It's creating, as it were, a conceptual reality that they wish to see. I mean, we see that this happens all the time. The invisible influence in advertising, in the mainstream media, in films, in television series, in books, in art. It's everywhere. And again, part of being awake, or awakening rather, is to learn to be highly discerning with regards to any and all information, conceptual information that we are, that we come across, or that is levied upon us one way or another, and to understand that nothing is straightforward. Nothing is. Love and light in and of themselves are good concepts when rightly employed. Not the way the New Age tells us we should employ it, not at all, no. We're not passive doormats. Also, God, it's like a minefield, people. It really is. It's like traversing a minefield, and you have to be able to see the little metal wires sticking up from the ground as you find your way through it. If you do not see those things, or if you think that it's a flower and try to pick it, it will blow up in your face. It is as simple as that. It's something that I've come across time and time and time again. Because before I awoke properly, I was into spirituality, and God Almighty, there were so many concepts that I accepted at the time unquestioningly, because I thought, oh, it must be good information, but I found out to my detriment that actually it was the opposite, and very good information that I rejected offhand because it was given to me by certain individuals and in a certain way that it evoked exactly that kind of reaction from me. I wasn't aware that I was being played at the time, but I have learned since that this is what happens. So be aware of that, people. Be aware that manipulation is the name of the game. They're very, very good at it. They've been doing it for a very long time. So it is important, in fact it's crucial, that we learn to be masters of this ourselves. We need to become very good at psychology. It's pivotal, really, to it all, is to understand psychology, to understand how we are behaviorally influenced all the time. I mean, we all see films, well, movies, as you would say in America, or TV series or whatnot. I've just spent a few days watching season 1, 2 and 3 of The Handmaid's Tale, and I learned a great deal from that. I found a lot of pearls in the mud in that case. I also learned that the reason they give us all these dystopian novels and dystopian TV series and dystopian movies is because we end up thinking, well, unawakened people end up thinking, oh, so that's what it's like to live in a totalitarian regime. It distracts them from the very fact that we are actually living in a totalitarian world, that we are living in dystopia. It is here, people. What you're looking at on your television screen isn't real. That is a distraction designed to make you think, oh, so that is what it's like. When in fact, it is here and it is happening now. That is the truth. I mean, the Hunger Games, those films, I mean, they were so trite and it was all so overt. We are living in a very clever, long-standing dystopian nightmare that is very chameleon by nature. It changes all the time. And we need to be aware of that. We need to use our minds. We have minds for a reason. The New Age would have you believe that the mind is a terrible thing to taste and that we shouldn't use it. Lose your mind and come to your senses is a proverb bandied about rather a lot, and I think it sounds very nice. A lot of what they say sounds very nice. It sounds very flowery and very wholesome, but it isn't. We have minds for a reason. We also have intuition. The idea is that our mind and our intuition should work as one. Feminine male principle working as one, basically, and that gives rise to correct action, good choices. See, that's the idea. But us being so fractured, our minds often say one thing, our intuition says another thing. We're used to going with the mind, we go with the mind, trouble ensues. This is what happens. So be aware of this, people. Be aware to not offhand reject information just because it comes from the mouth of somebody that you highly mistrust or somebody that is clearly not of the light. Filter it. Filter it through your intuition. Does it resonate? Is it useful? What can you do with it? Where are you at with regards to your awakening journey? Are you going within yourself? Are you doing the work within yourself? Anybody that thinks love is a bad thing and should be rejected is not functioning on all cylinders. Because fighting hatred with hatred is not going to fix anything here. Yes, we must be aware. We must see and acknowledge that which is happening in this realm, because it has a direct influence on the inner realm, the good and the bad, both, right? It's important that we see the good as well. Many of us are focused a great deal on the dark side of things, but there is light. We must learn to find the balance, because otherwise, we go sideways. It's important to find the balance in things. It's important to find the pearls in the muck. This is important. It's important to use the mind and to recognize which mind we are using, because we have the dark mind, which is the mind of the fake persona, which is like a bottomless pit, and it's full of fake ego, which serves us not. Then there is the mind of the true self, which is crystal clear, which feels good, that is what I call resonance, when it feels right, and you know through experimentation that it works for you. It may not work for somebody else, but as long as it works for you as an individual, then that is good. Some things work for a little while, then they do not work. Sometimes it's the other way around as well, but it's all a case of experimentation, critical thinking, discernment and filtering at all times, whilst at the same time allowing the gnosis to unfold within us, the seeing, the knowing, and what it has done to us, and what we can do to reverse, heal, alchemize that. Because everything in this world is a mirror and everything is a catalyst. Everything is utilized one way or another. I have seen this. Even when times are tough, people, there's no denying that, okay? It's tougher now than it's ever been before. So all the things that I've just mentioned are more important now than ever before. We must stay the course, even if we feel weakened, often enough, in mind and in body. Because as this poison is brought up from within us through external catalysts, and it's there, we often get sick as well. Don't forget that the reason we are sick, that the reason we are depressed, that the reason we are anxious is because of the poison within us. That is what causes all of that. Rapid aging, all of it. Aging is a disease, I'm convinced of that. It is all caused by the poison within us. The without as it manifests on the within, you see. So working through that, alchemizing that, often brings temporary confusion, chaos, dis-ease, depression, anxiety. All of that is par for the course. It doesn't mean you're getting it wrong. It often means, in fact, that you're getting it right. Often before I do a video, I get a feeling. In fact, it happened this morning of, oh no, you shouldn't really. And I was making myself a cup of tea and the cup slipped out of my hands and shattered all over the floor. Stuff like that will happen. Now I have two choices with that. I can think, oh, it must mean that I'm not supposed to do a video, or it must mean that I'm supposed to do a video and something doesn't want me to, so I do it. If it works out, great. If not, then the other side was right. You know, hey, you have to experiment with it and see where it goes. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. As long as you don't give up, as long as you keep working with it, testing it, putting it through the filter, see where it goes. Eventually you find your way, you know. Had some interesting things come up. I was watching Sacred Games on Netflix. It's actually quite a good television series, and again, there's a lot of pearls in the mug. It's quite good. Sacred Games. It's Indian, but it's quite good. And there was a character in it, some kind of hitman, an Egyptian guy, and for some reason the name Malcolm popped up into my head, and I said to my friend who was here, I said, I bet you he's called Malcolm. Stupid name for an Egyptian, I don't know, it's just one of those things. Next thing you know, he's called Malcolm. And there was a book that had a title that was somehow, the title irked me. It was like, this title is all wrong for that particular book. I picked up that book yesterday and the title was different. It's so weird because I wrote down the title of the book in one of my musings in my book, and I checked it, and that was the title of the book, and it was somehow that's just the wrong title, and the title's changed. It's so weird. It is just so strange. So these things happen, and these things show us that reality is not solid. It isn't. It bends all the time. It isn't solid at all. It's an illusion. It's Maya. Anyway, I'll call it the end for today. But well, yeah. Have a pleasant week, people, and keep doing the work. It's worth it.